Welcome to my video blog. I started out this series of video blogs by opening up a discussion, an investigation into this phenomenon that we call the knowing-doing gap. Why is it that we know things and we don't do them? Why is it that when we send people on training courses or let them read books or send them a memo, so they obviously know something, why don't they convert that into new behavior? So how do we actually bridge this knowing-doing gap? This is something that interests me enormously at the moment. And the two first videos, we've been looking at various ways of approaching that. The most recent one, we looked at this notion about our mindset. So the way we see something influences how our state of mind is, and our state of mind at the end of the day influences what we decide to do. You can watch that previous video if you're interested to go deeper into that. So when it comes to learning and development, Carol Dweck has documented very clearly that there are two types of belief. There are two ways of seeing the world. A very fixed way of seeing it, that talents are basically static, and a growth mindset, as she calls it, where people believe that they can learn virtually anything or they can always get better if they put into an effort into it. So today I'd like to talk a little bit about where do beliefs come from and how do we get rid of them? Because for most of us, we have some beliefs that sometimes get in the way of what it is that we'd actually really like to do. So here is a very simple map of your brain. These little crosses are neurons in your brain. And if I were to oversimplify this now, excuse me for doing that, but it makes it a little bit easier to understand. If we oversimplify this situation, when you have a thought, it is because there is a connection between two neurons. You think tomato, bing, there are two connections. If you think the same thought often, then that connection gets a little bit stronger. Get the line, the link becomes a little bit thicker and a little bit stronger. And if you think something the whole time, constantly, and day in and day out, then your brain starts reacting in such a way that think this is really an important line of thought that Mike has, and so we're going to actually make it easier for him to pursue this line of thought. So we actually grease the passageway there. We actually pack it into fat, and that's what it does. It's the white matter that you see in your brain, and that makes it even easier for that thought to occur. Now, obviously, it is then much easier down the line for me to have the thoughts that are built into the express highway than the little loose thought that I had down there in the punctuated line. This is also why when I do my courses and trainings and everything, I keep on asking people to stop and pause, have a discussion about what we're talking about, or maybe ask them to take notes, or if I have a course running over several days, I ask them to try and recapitulate what was it we talked about yesterday. And the reason I do that is that I'm trying to help them strengthen their connections between the neurons, because if I can get them to think the same thought, not just once when I said it, but 2 or 3 times during the time of the course, then I get a slightly stronger connection and a higher chance of them actually remembering down the line. But that's a different story. So how do I change my beliefs? Well, I basically change my beliefs by stop thinking what I usually think and I start thinking something else. Simple to say, not always so easy to do. But basically, if I don't like the thoughts that I had in that line, I need to start thinking something else. But in order to do that, I need to manipulate my brain a little bit, because as we saw when we talked about CB-Do, my belief frames or decides what kind of an attitude, what kind of state of mind I'm going to be in, and that then determines my action. It's really hard for me to decide that I now no longer believe what I believed 5 minutes ago, because that's a powerful highway that has been established in my brain, and my brain is not going to accept that from 1 minute to the next, that this is no longer what I believe. What I can do is I can manipulate my attitude a little bit. I can look at my attitude and then I can say to myself, okay, what if I reframe this a little bit? Instead of thinking, so my belief is that I'm never going to learn yoga. And so I have had the attitude that I don't attend yoga class, and the action is that I don't go to yoga. But what if I said to myself, what if I try going to yoga? would it be so dangerous? Would I make myself a complete idiot? Yeah, maybe it's not going to look too pretty, but that doesn't really matter. Let me try and see how hard it really is. And so I reframe it by putting in a question mark. Let me try. And that means that now I'm going to change my behavior, because instead of saying, no, yoga's not for me, I'm actually going to sign up for the first course. And I take new action. And then I sit in my yoga class maybe once or twice, and I suddenly realize, yes, it doesn't look like Jane Fonda, but there are things that I can do, and it's actually quite enjoyable, and it gives me a better sense of well-being and all sorts of other stuff. Maybe I should come back again tomorrow. And so suddenly I start having a different attitude. And once I start having a different attitude to it, I can increase the action. Maybe I could go to more yoga classes, or maybe I can start practicing at home on my own. And now I start getting big wins. And now I suddenly discover that I have a new belief. I no longer believe that it's impossible for me to do yoga. I now believe that I can do some yoga, and there's other yoga that I think is quite difficult. But it's this notion of starting out with questioning your attitude and saying, what if I actually challenged this belief that I've had for so long? Think about that. So this brings us back to this notion, so how does our brain actually work? Well, the key points are to understand is that your brain is a muscle. It works exactly in the same way that your muscles work. You need to practice, you need to train, and the more you train and practice, the stronger your muscle becomes, or your brain becomes. It's essential to understand that we don't learn by just knowing something. We need to actually convert it into doing. So I can read about yoga, but that's not going to help me a lot. I have to go do it. And then I realize that I actually can do it. And the more we do something, the more we learn, the more we reinforce that, especially when we do something with the intention to get better. Just repeating something endlessly and mindlessly doesn't help us get much better. But when we do something with the intention to get better, then it makes a huge difference down the line. So growth comes from struggle. No pain, no gain. That's just the way it is, and we have to accept that. If I want to develop and grow, it's not so much about what I was born with, it's about, am I willing to put in the effort to develop this? So your skills are built, they're not born, they're not inbred, and they're yours if you want to earn them. And so the key here in overcoming this knowing-doing gap is that it's not a question of resources. It's all about a lack of resourcefulness. If you want to solve it, you need to switch to doing something. If you don't do something, then nothing happens. So you need to move into action. That is the key. So thank you for watching the presentation today, and I hope to see you again next week. If you're looking to up your game as a team leader, check out my training site, thoughtsforaction.com, and if you want more inspiration about what I do, you'll find me on myconan.com. Thank you very much. See you soon again. Bye-bye.